Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's Burning Clay, and I am back with another Digimon deck profile video. Now, as you can tell, we're using a little different format than in the past for this deck profile. So if you like this, let me know down in the comment section below. But what we're going to do today is going to go over the BT8 BlackWarGreymon deck. Now, this is a deck I expect it to be pretty popular in the upcoming BT8 meta. It can probably be ran a few different ways, seeing how BlackWarGreymon and its associated line in BT8 are dual colored cards. So you could run more of a red base, you could run more of a black base if you wanted to. You could try to integrate a number of cards in here. So I do expect there to be a wide variety of ways you could run this. What we're going to go over today is what I would personally run if I put together a BlackWarGreymon deck. And I would love to get your guys' opinion on it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. First up, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our DIGITAMA. And we are going to run 4 copies of Koromon from BT5. Now, this has the inherited ability of when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has Omnimon or Greymon in its name, you trigger draw 1. Now, if you go through this deck profile, there aren't really many cards that will not trigger this draw 1 ability. As a matter of fact, once you get up past our level 3s, there are a total of 20 cards in this deck that will trigger this ability. And depending on how you build it, you could probably have more if you wanted to. But with this, this format that I'm running, it's going to be almost half the cards in the deck. Having that trigger draw 1 ability is really nice just to get some consistency going with the deck on your attacks. This allows you to try to make sure that you have as many cards in your hands as possible and make sure that you're able to make any play that you want to. And we're going to finish up our Digitama with 1 copy of Gorimon. Now, this is a Digitama that is coming out in BT8, and it has the inherited ability of when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has 6,000 DP or more, draw 1 card. So it's just another way for us to get a little bit of consistency going. This one will just trigger off of something other than the Greymon name. This one will be a 6,000 DP or higher. So this will allow some of those cards that we weren't able to trigger off of the Greymon name to trigger us a little bit of draw 1 and still get that consistency going. Just off the top, without any additional DP boost, there are 19 cards in this deck that can trigger this effect, and then there are another 4 cards that could potentially trigger this effect if you have some additional DP boosting from some of our other cards. So possibly you have 23 cards in this deck that could trigger this draw 1 ability. Now we're going to look at our level 3s, and the first level 3 that we're running are going to be 2 copies of Agumon, the promo version. Now this is the Agumon that has the inherited ability of on your turn, while this Digimon has Greymon in its name, you get plus 2,000 DP. So this is just a great way for us to increase the DP of our Digimon, make sure they have a little bit more survivability if we are going into our opponent's security. And like I mentioned earlier, with our Digitama, there are 20 cards in this deck that can trigger this Agumon's ability. So we have the chance to, give most of this deck a good DP boost in the end. Moving on, we're also going to be running 4 copies of the BT8 version of Agumon. Now, this Agumon is a black Digimon, but it has the ability to Digivolve on top of either a black or red Digitama. So our Digitamas being red isn't going to affect this and force us to hard play it. However, if we decide to hard play it, it does have the on play ability to reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, and you can add 1 card with Greymon in its name and 1 card with Dragonkin in its traits among them to your hand, and then you place the remaining cards at the bottom of your deck. So this is a great way for us to be able to search through our deck and really be able to get the cards that we need when we need them. Like I've mentioned already before, this deck has 20 cards with Greymon in its name. On top of that, we have 6 cards that will have Dragonkin. So we'll have plenty of pulling opportunities for this Agumon to help get the cards that we need to make the plays that we want. So next we're going to be looking at 4 copies of Agumon from BT1. Now this is the Agumon that on play allows us to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck. We're allowed to add 1 Tamer among them to our hand, and then we get to place the remaining cards at the bottom of our deck. Now the nice thing about this is that it does not specify a color of the Tamer. A lot of the cards from other Digimon specify, red, green, black, purple. This Agumon does not specify color, so we are running a couple of Tamers that are not red. So this allows us to still be able to pick them out and make sure that we're adding to our hand, and that way we can get some Tamers out on the board and start using their effects that will only help strengthen our plays. And we're going to round out our level 3s with another 4 copies of Agumon, but this time from BT5. Now this Agumon has the on-play ability to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, and we get to add 1 card with Greymon in its name and 1 card with Omnimon in its name to our hand. The rest go to the bottom of the deck. Now we're not running any Omnimons in this current version, but yet again we are running 20 Greymon cards, so we have plenty of cards that we can use this ability to be able to find in our deck. Being able to go through the 3 cards and not have a single Greymon in those cards is going to be really hard. So hopefully we will have the pieces that we need in hand to where we can kind of be choosy with which Greymon that we take with this effect. This deck looks to be pretty consistent with the amount of card draw and searchability that we have just from our level 3s alone. So hopefully we're able to use that to our advantage when running this deck. Now we're going to move on into our level 4s, and the first card we're looking at is 3 copies of Cyclomon. Now, no native abilities here, but we do have the inherited ability of when attacking, we can delete one of our opponent's Digimon with 2000 DP or less. So this will basically be a chance for us to, if our opponent has any sort of low level level 3s on the field, we can just delete that, clear a small body off the board, and just give our opponent 1 less body to work with. What's really nice about this card is the fact that it is dual colored. So we can digivolve either on top of red or black, and then the card itself is red and black, so it can then digivolve into either a red or black Digimon as well. Just helping us with our consistency, making sure that we don't get stuck on our black Agumon, but then we also have a way to get up off of our reds as well. So just a nice little consistency factor with the deck. Moving on, we are going to have 4 copies of Greymon from BT8, and this has the inherited ability of while you have a red Digimon in play, this Digimon gains blocker. So just a way for us to try to give some of our stronger Digimon the blocker ability and prevent our opponent from being able to just spam with lower levels and attacking our security without worry. It's nice that it can also digivolve on top of red or black. So just like our Cyclomon, it just makes sure that we stay consistent in the deck, always having a way to move up into our level 4s and higher, regardless of the cards that we have in hand. We're going to finish up our level 4s with 4 copies of Greymon from BT5. Now this has the ability of when digivolving, this Digimon has an Agumon in its Digivolution cards, we gain 1 memory. So even though the typical cost for digivolving is 2, we could get away with digivolving for just 1. And then on our turn, while this Digimon has Omnimon or Greymon in its name, it gets plus 2000 DP. So just like our Agumon that we had earlier, just a chance for us to be able to boost up the DP of our stronger Digimon and allow them to have a little bit more survivability if we're trying to make an early play into security. We're looking at 12 cards above this Greymon that would be able to benefit from this 2000 DP, and most of them would be pushed close to 10k or even higher to 14-15k, depending on which cards we have. So moving on into our level 5s, we're going to start off with 2 copies of Metal Greymon from EX1. This has the native ability of when attacking, when this Digimon attacks a player, you can delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So it's nice to have that little bit of removal possibility. Just again, kind of like our Cyclomon, trying to take one of our opponent's smaller bodies off the field, just give them less to work with. The even better trait though is its inherited skill, which is while this Digimon has Machine or Dragonkin in its traits, it gains Piercing. So being able to attack a suspended Digimon, delete it off the board, and then still be able to get into security is always nice. This is something that you typically see more with green cards, but it's nice that we'll be able to have this in this deck. Also, this card can Digivolve on top of red or black for a 3 cost. So we don't have to worry about whether it's our red Greymon, our black Greymon, or our Cyclomon. Metal Greymon can Digivolve on top of either and allow us to continue to make our plays. Next, we're going to be looking at 4 copies of Metal Greymon from BT8. Now, this is another dual-colored card that can also Digivolve on top of black or red. So again, we don't have to necessarily be worried about what cards we have on the field. If we want to go into Metal Greymon, we should be able to do so. And then we also have the nice ability of when Digivolving, we get Digivolve -1 on one of our opponent's Digimon, and then delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less. So once again, we're looking at another chance for a little bit of card removal. If nothing else, we've taken a strong monster, reduced it down a level, and that never hurts either. Then we have the inherent ability of while on our turn, while this Digimon has Dragonkin or Machine in its traits, it can also attack your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. So before we had Piercing, now we can just straight up attack one of our opponent's unsuspended Digimon, and even though we don't get that extra benefit of going into security afterwards, we're still able to eliminate one of our opponent's Digimon off the field, and they can't protect it by leaving it unsuspended. So it's just a nice way for us to be able to apply some pressure to our opponents and make sure that they never are safe with just hard playing a lower level Digimon to try to set up a move for the next turn. If they put one out, we have Metal Greymon as an inheritable. We could take it out before it actually becomes a problem for us. Last but not least, our last level 5 is going to be 3 copies of Chimeramon. Now this is coming out in BT8, and I've said it in other deck profile videos that I've done that I believe this is probably going to be the most popular card in the BT8 meta, because you could basically put it in almost any deck that you wanted to. It has the ability to DNA Digivolve from any 2 level 4s, and then when Digivolving, you can place another level 5 or lower Digimon from your trash under this Digimon as its bottom Digivolution source, and then you can add up to 4 of your opponent's Digimon, get -3 or 1000 DP for each Digimon colors that you have until the end of your opponent's next turn. So with this, we are looking at Chimeramon being white. We will have black and red. And with the way that this deck works out, there is a good chance that you are probably going to have both black and red in this Digimon's Digivolution sources. And then even if you don't, even if you somehow just get the black Agumon and the black Greymon, you can still get red in its Digivolution sources using its Digivolving ability to place a level 5 under this Digimon's card as a Digivolution source, and then we can make sure that we're giving our level 6s one of those nice inheritable traits. The best target would probably be one of the Metal Greymons, or maybe even our red Greymon level 4 for the piercing ability, the attacking the unsuspended Digimon, or even just getting that DP boost from the red Greymon if we know that we are about to go into one of our level 6s. If we're just going to try to keep Chimeramon on the field and not go into our level 6s, you might want to look into Cyclomon, just to where we could kind of benefit from the potential of the removal of the 2000 DP or less inheritable trait. Chimeramon itself won't really benefit from either the Greymon or the Metal Greymon as far as their inheritable effects, because they are so specific as to what they are looking for to trigger them. But then being able to delete up to 4 opponents, or reduce our up to 4 opponents Digimon minus 3000 DP, and then that carries over until the end of their next turn, is very nice. It kind of prevents them from being able to just willy-nilly go swinging in with, typically around 8000 DP. You would feel pretty confident going into security. 5000 DP, not so much. Then at that point, you also have the chance that we could have a Digimon with blocker. So now suddenly we have the advantage as far as DP value. So we could just, wipe them out completely. And depending on what they have on the field, minus 3000 DP might just be enough to, delete a fewer of those Digimon. And then you have to factor in being able to potentially use that ability to tie in with, like, say, Cyclomon. So you put Cyclomon underneath, you swing in, you've deleted, you've went from a 5000 DP down to a 2000 DP Digimon, and suddenly Cyclomon's inherited ability is within range to just wipe somebody off the board. So different ways to be able to tie them into one another. Chimeramon definitely going to be a strong card in the meta, regardless of the deck that you're running. I would be extremely surprised not to see a Chimeramon in the deck. Now we're going to move on into our level 6s, and the first card that we're going to look at is 4 copies of BlackWarGreymon from BT8. Now this is a dual color black-red card, can digivolve on top of black or red, and when digivolving, if you have a red Digivolution card, you can choose a Digimon. A black Digivolution card, you can choose a Tamer, and then you can delete up to any cards with a play cost of 6 or less and delete them off the board. What's really nice about this is, yes, it is removal for your opponent's Digimon. Being able to reduce the bodies on your opponent's side is always nice, but the fact that you can go after Tamers is probably the best trait on this card. Being able to take your opponent's Tamers off the board, whether it's a memory setter or if it's something that's helping them gain memory, or potentially putting cards back in their security, or boosting up security Digimon DP, whatever it is, being able to remove a Tamer and put it back in the trash is huge. So that's a big reason why you would want to run this, regardless of the different options that you have. Now, on all turns, once per turn, when a Digimon or opponent's Digimon is deleted, you can unsuspend this Digimon. So this would be big when we're looking at having one of our Metal Greymons underneath this card as a Digivolution source, because either A, we're going to go in with Piercing, or we can just attack unsuspended Digimon. Regardless, if we go with Piercing, we can attack a Digimon, pierce it, get it off the board, unsuspend it, also get our security check, and then we have one more turn, or one more chance to do just that. So we could potentially be looking at clearing 2 bodies and 2 securities off the board if we're able to survive everything. Even if you have just the other Metal Greymon that has unsuspended targets, you could still look at taking 2 bodies off the field if some of the other inheritable abilities aren't activated, taking even more off the board. So just being able to attack multiple times is a nice trait for this card, just to make sure that you're always able to maximize what it does on a single turn. Speaking of maximizing what you do on a single turn, our last card of this deck, as far as Digimon is concerned, is going to be 2 copies of BlackWarGreymon, the promo version. Now this has the main ability of Digiburst 2, and as long as you delete 2 of your Digivolution cards, you are able to activate the following effect below, which is to unsuspend this Digimon. So let's just think about this for a second. You come up into a normal path. You have your DIGITAMA, you have your level 3, your level 4, your level 5, and then you have BlackWarGreymon. So under BlackWarGreymon, you have a total of 4 cards in a normal full built stack. That means you could unsuspend this Digimon twice and get in 3 attacks on 1 turn. However, we are running Chimeramon. So let's just think about this for a second. You have two stacks of level 4s. You have your DIGITAMA, you have your level 3, you have your level 4. That's 3 cards. Say we have 2 stacks, that's 6 cards, underneath Chimera, which is 7, who then gets to put a card from the trash as a Digivolution source. That's 8. That is 4 times that you can unsuspend on one turn, assuming you survive all the attacks that you do, and potentially up to 5 attacks because of that, just because of the way this card works. It is an amazing trait to have, and I'm surprised more people aren't talking about this card as far as being something to pull out in this deck. Really insane option. You could really come in and let it be like the big time sweeper at the end of the game to make sure that you can just finish off your opponent in one hit without them really being able to do anything about it. All right, we're going to move on to our options, and we are only running one option in this deck, and that is going to be 4 copies of Dark Gaia Force, which is coming out in BT8. Now, Dark Gaia Force, much like the regular Gaia Force, allows you to delete your opponent's Digimon off the field. The difference is how it works. So here you can choose any number of your opponent's Digimon that adds up to a play cost of 15 or less and delete them. So either A, you can go after one big body, or you can try to take multiple bodies off the field and really reduce the amount of Digimon that your opponent has to work with. If it is in security, this one will only delete one of your opponent's Digimon that has a play cost of 15 or less. So it works a little more similar to Gaia Force in that effect, where you're only going to be able to delete one. So even though the play cost is 8 here, you're really going to get more bang for your buck if you do hard play this card rather than seeing it in security. Still, for your opponents to know that you have this and it's possibly sitting there waiting on them in security, it's always going to be a little bit of a deterrent. At that point, you have to worry about, do I swing in here? Do I want to risk it at this point? And it could potentially be slowing your opponents down and stop them from being as aggressive into your security, kind of giving you time to set your plays up. All right, moving on, we're going to go straight into our tamers. And we are running 3 copies of Marcus Daemon. Now, he's going to be our memory setter, making sure that we're always sitting at 3. But he also has the extra benefit of, on our turn, when one of our Digimon with Greymon in its name attacks, we can suspend this tamer to gain an extra memory. So we've already mentioned time and time again, this deck has a total of 20 cards with Greymon in its name that can trigger this effect. So we have plenty of chances to be able to attack, go in and actually gain a memory, and help prolong our turns a little bit longer, allow us to be a little bit more aggressive. Then, like any security or any tamer card, its security effect allows us to play the card without paying its memory cost. Finally, we're going to wrap up this deck with 3 copies of Nokia. Now, this Nokia has an on-play effect to allow us to play one of our Agumon or Gabumon from our hand without paying its memory cost. So obviously, we're not running any Gabumon in this deck, but we do have our Agumon. And then the nice thing about it is 3 out of the 4 versions of Agumon that we are running actually have an on-play effect. So 12 out of our 14 level 3s could have an on-play effect that we could then partner with Nokia in order to just really get some good card draw going, making sure we're putting bodies on the field and then getting cards into our hand. It also has the main effect of, when digivolving one of our Digimon into a card that has Omnimon or Greymon, even Garurumon, but we're not worried about that, we can suspend this tamer and reduce the memory cost by 1 Digivolution. So this will help out a lot more when we get into our level 6s. They are a little steeper when it comes to the Digivolution cost, but it'll also help us be really aggressive at our lower levels, as we have like the 1 red Greymon. It's a 2 cost to digivolve, but then we gain a memory back, so it's really only a 1 cost. If we have Nokia on the field, we could actually digivolve into it for free and then keep that memory to make an even more aggressive play later on. And then, just like our Marcus, security effect is to play the card without any memory cost. So that'll do it for the deck profile. Now, like I said, there's always ways that you can run some variations of these decks. And what I would actually like to do is go over some of the other cards that you could potentially run in this deck instead of what I've presented so far. So first up, what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple versions of Greymon. We have the BT1 version of Greymon, which will give us a DP boost, which is always nice because it allows us the chance to kind of increase the strength of our Digimon and get over the top of some of our opponent's stronger Digimon. Now, the card that we probably want the most in this deck would be the starter version of Greymon from the very first starter deck, because its inheritable ability is security attack +1. Now, I wanted to include it in the original deck profile, but I know this card isn't necessarily the easiest. Like, you could go get it from the starter deck, but I've heard that the original starter decks are kind of hard to come by these days. And then if you go on the secondary market, the price of it is a little cheap or a little steep for, you know, just a standard level 4. So, you know, your average player that doesn't have a ton of money to just throw at these decks might have a hard time being able to procure this card. So it is an option that you would have. It's probably the preferred option, but I know not everybody is going to be able to include it. Now, I also put the Metal Greymon Alterius mode from BT5. It has a Digivolving ability that if you are on top of another Metal Greymon, you can delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 4,000 DP or less. So again, we're looking at some removal. And then it also gives a DP boost to any of your Greymon on top of it. So then we could go into our BlackWarGreymons and then get even another 2,000 DP on top of any other potential boost that we have as well. The biggest issue with this card is it only digivolves on top of red, so it kind of limits the amount of Digimon that we could digivolve on top of. So that's the biggest reason I left it off of the list originally. A couple of tamers that you could look at would be the Taikamiya from BT6. Just way you could get a little bit of memory boost and card draw when bringing a card out of the raising area. You really wouldn't be able to use the bond of friendship aspect unless you wanted to run some sort of weird bond of friendship style. But it is an option if you wanted it. I mainly included it in this section simply because, you know, being able to bring your cards out of raising and then get some card draw and a memory off of it is just nice in my opinion. Moving on, we're also looking at Hero, which is coming out in BT8. And like Marcus, it would be a memory setter, making sure we're at 3. But it would also allow us to, any Digimon that's level 5 or higher, we could suspend him and give a 2,000 DP increase to that Digimon. So just another way to make sure that we can, you know, add some DP to our Digimon, give them a little bit more survivability, or get them over the top of our opponent's stronger Digimon to give us the advantage in that aspect. Also looking here, you could run the option card of A Delicate Plan. This is just allowing you to attack into security without worrying about activating any effects of option cards on your checks. So if you partnered it with, say, the promo version of BlackWarGreymon, and you're able to get in, you know, 3, 4, 5 checks in, and you have a delicate plan, you're not necessarily worried about any option cards. You're only worried about, at that point, do I have enough DP to survive any sort of insanely strong card that could be hiding in security. And as long as, you know, if you throw any DP boosting on top of your Digimon, you might not even be too worried about that either. Looking at some level 6s that we could run, we've got the WarGreymon from BT1, we've got the Blitz Greymon from the Black starter deck, you have BlackWarGreymon from BT2, as well as Victory Greymon from BT4. Blitz Greymon and Victory Greymon, They both kind of do the same thing as our promo version of BlackWarGreymon, where they kind of use the Digiburst ability to have some sort of effect. Their effect isn't as good as the unsuspending of the BlackWarGreymon, but you've got one that can give a DP boost, and you've got another that could remove an opponent off the board with Blitz and Victory respectively. So, you know, it is something that you could think about. Our BlackWarGreymon from BT2 would allow you to reduce the play cost if we had a 10,000 DP or stronger opponent Digimon, so you could actually hard play him for 7. And then when attacking, you could unsuspend him as well, as long as you're attacking the strongest Digimon on your opponent's side. So that's a way that you're not necessarily worried about attacking security as much as just trying to board wipe them and then kind of getting one last hit in security after you've cleared their board. The BT1 BlackWarGreymon just standardly gets security attack +1 on its Digivolving turn, and then it basically has a built-in delicate plan to where it does not activate security skills on option cards when you check security. So at that point, it's just free checks. You're just worried about whether or not you're going to run into a strong Digimon. Last but not least, I didn't include any level 7s in the original deck, but I do think these cards would work if you wanted to run and find a way to sneak them in. With Ultra S, you have it being able to Digivolve on top of red or black, so you know, we have the ability to Digivolve on top of any of the cards that we've mentioned as far as what was already in the deck, or maybe some potential substitutes in from the last page. So we're not worried about whether or not you'd be able to get into it. And then when you're looking at it, you trigger a Digivolve on Digivolution, so you're able to, you know, weaken one of your opponent's Digimon, and then on top of that, you're looking at potentially some removal when you start looking into deleting your opponents with Digimon with 5,000 DP or less. Then you can make him unblockable by sacrificing a level 6 back into your hand. So then you can get one of your level 6s back and then play it on top of another level 5 and just continue the cycle up. It's the same thing with Omnimon Zwart, of being able to recycle the level 6s back to your hand. That's one that you can do with Omnimon Zwart in order to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 12 or less. But then also when you're Digivolving, it allows you the chance to add up to 2 cards to the field from your trash. So you could be looking at suddenly widening your board and putting, you know, some stronger Digimon on the field, and then since you have your level 6 back in your hand, you can go right back into a level 6, start making more plays. And then obviously you have Omnimon Zwart Defeat, which, you know, when you Digivolve, you're able to delete your opponent's Tamers. On deletion, you get to delete one of your opponent's Digimon anyway, so you can be super aggressive with that. And then if it's in security, you get to play it for free. So that's just a huge benefit for Zwart Defeat, even though it is slightly weaker DP wise than what your typical level 7s are. It just allows you to just be ultra aggressive with this card, and it's hard for most people to put away. But that will do it, not only for the deck profile, but some other options that you have. As always, please get down in those comment sections and let me know what you think. Which cards do you think don't need to be in it? Do you think any of those cards that I mentioned as potential substitutions would work better than what I already have in the deck? And what do you think of some of those level 7 plays that I mentioned? I do think that I would want to try to find a way to squeeze those in if I could at least get me a couple of those Omnimons in there, because we do have that Omnimon's synergy with some of the cards that we're playing, as well as our Nokia. So let me know what you guys think, but until then, we'll catch you in the next video.